How's it going, folks? Thank you very much for stopping by in this another part of this Call of Duty style loadout series. Today we're going to take a look at how to set up our perks and also to visually update them and also customize it in our loadouts. It's a pretty simple tutorial. It might be a little bit long, sorry about that, but thank you again for stopping by. Let's get into the video. So first I'm going to go to my content drawer, UI, and I'm going to go and create a new folder, and this would be named as perks. And I'm going to borrow this primary weapon select for our perks. And also I'm going to select this W primary box for our perks as well. Now, let's go ahead and rename this. We're just going to name this as perk box because we can use this perk box for any perks that we choose. This primary weapon select, we're going to go ahead and make this as perk select. Perk select. We need one more UI. This is to display the perk on the actual bag itself. For that, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this perk box, and we're going to reuse this. So we're going to name this W underscore perk underscore loadout scene. And inside of this perk loadout scene, we're going to go ahead and open this up and then get rid of the name. We no longer need the name of the perk because the bag is not going to show the name. I'm going to right click on this weapon image and then go ahead and cut it. And then select the size box, right click, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it. And it's going to tell you that it's going to erase everything else if you go ahead and paste it. Do you wish to proceed? You say yes. And as you can see, you just got yourself the size box and also this weapon image, which we're going to rename into perk underscore img. That got changed up there. And then now we're going to resize this box really quickly. We're going to make it into a square. So I'm just going to increase the height to 350. And now we can go back to our portrait and then drag, let's say, the stamina maybe. Let me select the perk image first and then drag the stamina over here. And now we got ourselves the stamina icon. I'm going to compile, and then it's going to give you an error. That's because in our graph we have our on select button that needs to go. And also we're going to go ahead and get rid of this S weapon info and also this name. We need to build our image based on the perk that is being sent over, which is pretty straightforward. You just got to take this S weapons info. Let's rename it into S perk info and make this of type S underscore perks info. Now drag this, drop it and say get, drag off of this, and we're going to go ahead and break it. And here I'm going to take the portrait and connect it to this texture. This to name text, we can get rid of that. Compile and save, and make sure this is instance editable and expose on spawn because we need to communicate this information over to this. So now we can go ahead and close this W perk loadout scene. In our loadout scene itself, I'm going to scroll here. Again, you can choose any type of component to use as your background. I just chose these bags. This is the closest thing to a satchel that I was able to find on Fab. So I'm using this, but in your game, you can change it to whatever and however you like it. So I'm going to select this perk one, and I'm going to go ahead and click on add, and then add in a new widget. And this one, I'm going to name this as W underscore perk one. Select this perk two. And I don't really like this being the perk 2. I want this to be perk 1, perk 2, and perk 3. So I'm going to take this perk 3 and I'm going to rename this. That makes more sense. So perk 1, perk 2, and perk 3. So we already have our widget for our perk 1. I'm going to select perk 2 and then add in a new widget. And this would be W underscore perk 2. Last but not least is for the perk 3. Add in a new widget for this. W underscore perk 3. So now I'm going to select my perk 1, and right here where it says widget class, I'm going to go ahead and select my perk underscore loadout scene, and that's going to generate it here. You can see the faint image in the back, so we're just going to pull this out to see and rotate it, and we just need to now scale it, and then also position it in front of the bag right here. So I'm going to drop the scale. I have this lock here, so X, Y, and Z, everything scales at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and leave at this size. And yeah, there we go. And then now for perk 2, do the same thing. I'm going to select that exact same loadout scene. I can actually select this perk and then, right click, copy this value and then select perk 2, right click and then paste it. And then also go to perk 1, right click and then select copy the rotation. And then on perk 2, right click and paste the rotation. So it rotates this way. And then now I can scale it as per my liking. This one looks about good here. Again, like I mentioned, you can always choose to put like a flat ground in the back here instead of a bag. I just wanted to try to be as close to as what they did in Call of Duty as possible. Just, you know, that inspiration is very good. And then now, same for the perk 3. I'm going to select perk 2, right click, copy its location, and then select perk 3, paste its location, select perk 2, copy its rotation, paste it here, and the widget class, I'm going to select same thing, loadout scene. Now scale, I'm going to go ahead and drop the scale to, let's say 0.4. There you go, just like that. Again, this should do the trick. So we have all of the 3 perks and the bag showing. We need to set this up default. So I'm going to go to my event graph, and this is where we're setting up our update primary and everything like that. I'm going to select this update tactical and then go ahead and duplicate it. And I'm going to say update underscore perk 1. And then duplicate this again, and then this will be perk 2. Duplicate this and then perk 3. This way you can individually select perk 1 and perk 2, perk 3, and then update them as you need it. So perk 1, I'm going to open it up, and here I'm going to delete this tacticals info, delete all of this, we don't need any of that. And the perk info, instead of tacticals, we're going to name this as perk 1, and this would be s underscore perks info. What we're going to do here is, when we update the perk 1, we want to first go ahead and create a widget. And this would be our loadout scene, right? And here we get the S perk info because we made it expose on spawn. So we're going to feed this perk information here. And this return value, so we want to drag in our W perk 1. And then we're going to go ahead and say set widget. And then connect this execution pin. And this return value, we're going to go ahead and connect this to the widget here. And now we can select our perk 1 and we can actually get rid of this widget because we no longer need that. And same thing for perk 2. We're going to just copy this entire perk setup and go to perk 2. Delete this whole thing. We can go ahead and paste it. Replace this perk 1 reference with the perk 2 reference as the target. And the update perk 2 tacticals, we're going to go ahead and name this as perk 2. Oh, perk 2. And make this of type S perks info. Connect the execution pin here and then the perk 2 information over to S perk info. Compile. Now we can select our perk 2 and we can get rid of this. We no longer need it. And last but not least, we're going to do the same thing to our perk 3. Delete all of this, paste it, connect this execution pin, get rid of this W perk 2 reference, drag this perk 3 reference onto the target, get it connected. And this perk 3, we're going to get rid of the tacticals, and then we're going to name this perk 3, and it's going to be of type S perks info. And then connect this perk 3 over here. Before we go ahead and test, we just need to go to our event graph and then go ahead and update it. So we're going to drag our perk 1, connect it here, and then drag our perk 2, connect it, and then drag our perk 3, connect it to our updates. So this is our event begin. As soon as the game starts, this is how the update's going to go through. And then now we can connect our perk 1 to perk 1 here, perk 2 to perk 2, perk 3 to perk 3. Your viewport's not going to show anything. That's how it's supposed to be. So when I press play and when I press T and select loadout, you notice there's nothing on the bag here, but as soon as I hover over loadout 1, you notice that the perk actually shows up on the bag. So if I select the bag and then if I go ahead and select perk 1, you notice how the bag has updated. Perk 2 and then perk 3. So now that we have done updating our loadout scene, we're going to go ahead and work on the rest. We can go ahead and close out this loadout scene. And then let's continue on in our content drawer. Go to our UI folder, perks. So we're done with the perk loadout scene. Now we need to go ahead and update our perk box. So we're going to keep everything as it is. And the image, we're going to go ahead again. The name, we're going to rename this as perk underscore img. And the weapon name here, I'm going to change it to perk name.text. And the weapon select button, I'm going to name it as perk select button. Select the image and then set this to my health. So now select the graph And here, it's the same thing as what we have been doing all this while, but just a small difference. So we're going to get rid of this S weapon info. We're going to get rid of this weapon info. And we're going to leave this perk name text and the perk image as it is. The S weapon info, I'm going to go ahead and make this of type S underscore perks info. And this would be S perks info. And now we're going to drag this as perks info, break it, and then perk name would be connected here, and the portrait of the perk will be connected here. Same thing, get as perks info. We need to now create a new interface function for selecting the perk. So I'm going to go ahead, double click on it so it opens up my interface. And then I'm going to add in a new function, and this is going to be UI underscore perks underscore on clicked. Compile, and this is going to bring in the information of the perks info. This will be S underscore perks info. And this is the information that it's going to send out. And one more information that we want to send out here is also the class information. I'm going to go ahead and add a new variable and make this as class. This would be of type E underscore perk class. Remember, we have 3 different classes of perks that we have set up, class 1, class 2, class 3. So when this box gets generated, we're not only notifying that the perk got selected, we're also going to be notifying that this specific class of perk got selected. This way, it'll be easy for us to update specific class of perk. So we can go ahead and compile and save. And now back in our content drawer, where we have the perk select, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of everything up here because we don't really need this box here. And this, we don't need any of this function. We do need a filter by class, but we don't need a filter weapons by class. This is going to be a filter perks by class. So first I'm going to rename this and name this as filter perks by class. And if I open this up, where we have the input of class right now set to eWeapon class, we're going to change this to perk class, right? And then we're going to, again, rename this just to keep it consistent. Instead of weapon filter, we're going to name this as perk filter array. And then the data table row, we're going to get the perks data. And for each loop, we're going to go through, again, perks data here. This is S weapon info, so we can go ahead and delete it and then drag from this out row now. And when you break it, you're going to get the perks info. And again, we can delete this class here. We're going to have to redo that. And then we're going to drag this class from the perks info and check if it is the same thing as the get class here. If it is, then we're going to go ahead and add it to the perk array. Compile and save. In our event graph, we're going to set this to class 1, class 2, or class 3. This is going to be sent in by the player when they select the specific perk. If they select perk 1, we want to start with perk class 1. If they select perk 2, then we want to select a class 2 and such. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new variable that will be perk underscore class. And this would be of type ePerk class. I'm going to go ahead and make this instance editable and also expose on spawn. Save. I'm going to drag this perk class and then connect it in here. And the create children, I'm going to double click on create children. And again, right now, it's going to go ahead and create a children in the weapon container wrap. I can go to the designer, select this container, the weapon container, and then rename this to perk container. And then also the weapon container wrap. I'm going to name this as perk container wrap. Now that gets updated, and then we're going to have to create our, based on our perks data, our data table row, we need to change it into perks data. And so this will no longer work because we're no longer going to create a primary weapon. If you drop down, we already created our perk box. So now we can drag this out row and connect it to S perks, right click on this, and then we're going to go ahead and refresh it. That'll get rid of the S weapon info, and everything else can stay the same. So not major change, just a quick small change. And now we have to go to our pause menu. So we're going to go to our UI folder, open up our pause menu, graph. We're going to go ahead and create a new Boolean here, and we're going to name this perks underscore select underscore open. We're going to drag this and we're going to go ahead and set it. And there's perk 1, perk 2, and perk 3. So I'm going to drag perk 1 in here to set. And same thing here, I'm going to copy this 2 more times. And then set it for perk 2 and perk 3, because regardless of which perk is open, we're going to only notify that the perk is open. And then make sure that we set this to checked. And then the loadout container and the main button, we're going to go ahead and make sure the visibility is set to hidden. So we can drag this here, paste it. Let me move this further down. Let's move it a little bit lower. We're going to go ahead and paste it here. And the next thing that we're going to get is the creating the widget. So I'm going to go ahead and create it manually here. So I'm going to go create widget. And this widget would be our perk select. And now you can see the perk class option is available for us. First, let's drag this owning player and say get player controller. And because this is perk 1 that we're doing the code for, this is going to be set as class 1. I'm going to copy these two, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste it here. And then the return value, I am going to get a reference by making it into a variable, promoting to a variable, and I'm going to say perk w widget underscore perk select underscore 1. And then this would be, again, promote to a variable, and this would be widget underscore perk select underscore 2. Drag off of this, and then we're going to promote this to a variable as well, and we're going to go w underscore perk select underscore 3. Now that we have our references, we can go ahead and copy and paste this add to viewport and showing our back button. Connect this here and connect it here. Compile and save. Now we don't have too many perks in here, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this health perk another time, and that will be on class 1. Stamina, I'm going to duplicate it as well, and then armor, I'm going to duplicate it. Again, I'm going to duplicate it a couple more times, and just so that we have a list that populates so that you can see it. We have to now update our first person character. So go to the blueprints folder where your first person character blueprint is. And here, where we say interface UI on perks clicked, we need to first set this perks interface up, because if you go to your perk box, and then if you go to your graph, we haven't connected our newly created interface function here. So let's go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and delete this and then drag off of this get player and say UI underscore perk on clicked. And here, we're going to send our perks info, and we do not need to send in the class info because our perks info here that's being sent over already has the class info. So we don't need to send in the class info again. If you would like, you could always drag this in here, but it's not necessary. So in our first person character, now we can go ahead and implement this event, UI perks clicked. And now we need to create a new function to update this perks on our loadout system. So if I go ahead and double click on this update tacticals, it's going to open up my loadout system and also this tactical function. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to duplicate it. And this one's going to be named update perks. I'm not going to create separate functions for perk 1, 2, and 3. We can actually manage to do that here. I'm going to select the update perks, change this tacticals info into perks info. Let the index be as it is. And this S tactical info, we're going to go ahead and then name this as S perks info. And click this set loadout members instruct and then uncheck the tacticals. And here we have perk 1, perk 2, and perk 3. This is where we're going to make a small change. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this loadout struct get 3 times. W1, 2, and 3. Let's move this update perks a little bit further back. Instead of this lines dragging through for the index, I'm going to go ahead and then drag off of this and say get index. That'll be the last function here. And now I can connect this here and also here. This will be the same information. Compile. And then the first one, I'm going to say set perk 1. The second one is going to be set perk 2. And third one is going to be perk 3. So how we're going to update each of this is when we get our perks info, we're going to drag off of this perk info. and we're going to break it, and then we're going to get this class. And this class information, we're going to drag off of it, and then we're going to go ahead and switch on ePerk class. And this will be connected to our update perks. And if it is class 1, we're going to go ahead and set our member for perk 1. And this perks info will get connected into perk 1 right here. And if it is class 2, then same thing, this perk info. Again, I don't need to drag it all the way. I can just drag off of this and say get perks info, right? This perks info is exactly same thing as this perks info. I can just copy and paste this and then connect it here. And do the same thing here for perk 3. The switch class 3, I'm going to set this up here. Compile and save. Now, based on the perk selection, it's going to go ahead and update the perk accordingly. Now, back in our first person character, we can now put in the function. So BPC loadout system. We can drag off of this and say update perks. Drag here, and then the perks info, we're going to connect it to the perks info. Index would be our current selected loadout index. A loadout setup, UI update, all of these functions would just copy over and then connect it in here. And then also this index, we're going to plug it in there. If I go ahead, select loadout, custom loadout 1, and if I select perk 1, the camera is moving, but then the list is not showing. So let's go ahead and quickly diagnose what happened. So it's in the pause menu that we need to look at. This is where we're building all of our perks. And so there's two issues that I identified. First is during the perk select, I set class 1 for all 3 of them. So let's go ahead and change that to class 2 and then class 3. The next thing is when we did the reference and did the add to wayport, I forgot to connect this target here. So go ahead and connect the target here. So now if I press play, T for loadout, custom loadout, and if I select perk 1, you see all the health, perk 1 and such, and select perk 2, you can see all the stamina and everything, which is good. And if I select perk 3, you see all the armor all over here again. So all the 3 perks are working fine. And one more quick test that we can do is to go to our perks data, and then where it says health, our class 1s, I'm going to quickly select the second health and then change the image only, just so I can show you that the perk select is working fine as well. I'll just change it to the stamina instead. So if I go ahead and now press play, T loadout, custom loadout, and if I select perk 1 and if I select on stamina here, this should change to stamina, updating our entire loadout system properly. All right, folks, I think this is a great spot for us to close our tutorial here for our perk system as well. In our next video, we'll take a look at how to make our back button multifunctional that can work between different widgets. And also that would be our last video in this tutorial series. Once again, folks, thank you again for stopping by, and thank you very much for helping me grow this channel to where it is right now. I'm really, really grateful. And if you have any request for my next tutorial series, let me know in the comment section below and I might look at it and maybe we'll just end up making that tutorial series for you. So once again, thank you very much for stopping by. Have yourself a great evening.